So, lads, Sophie Cunningham has said what we all know. She said what we all know, we all agree with. And it's good a WNBA player has finally said it. Because I do think that it's important that, players are talking about this and not just blindly agreeing with what people that we're not fully convinced want the league to continue to happen are saying. Because let's be real, there is a massive conflict of interest with Unrivaled and with NECA now, with everything. So Sophie Cunningham in 2 months, they'll be taking to South Beach for the start of Unrivaled. We know that. And by the way, I think Unrivaled, when the day that Unrivaled began to try to almost rival the WNBA, and the day the players started saying, we have this in Unrivaled, so it's the minimum we should get, that every team should get in the WNBA. And it's like, well, the difference is that Unrivaled is one arena. Like, if you can get, it's not that hard to get all these facilities for 30 players in one city. But it's very hard to get all those facilities for 15 teams in 15 cities for 200 players. Very different. Like, Sophie Cunningham notes conflict of interest. This is the thing. Sophie Cunningham, this is good. It's kind of some tea. So both of Fee are great fucking players, right? Phenomenal. She said to her co-host when explaining Unrivaled. But they're also part of WNBA's exec board, and so that could be a little conflict of interest because WM and Unrivaled. So if you continued later on, she added, that's why there's a conflict of interest a little bit. So that's interesting. Like, that's the thing, and that's one of the things that, like, it's so weird that players just won't. Players think that that's like some attack on players and it's attack on everything, saying that Unrivaled is a conflict of interest. Like, that Unrivaled is a conflict of interest, and like it could actually like be a negative in the negotiations. Having someone that is a part owner of Unrivaled, as is the same with Neko Wumake. But I do have to say that it's one of those things for me that I'm like, as much as it's a conflict of interest, that doesn't mean that Unrivaled is a bad thing. But it's just, it becomes very, very, it's impossible to say. Like, as we've always said, like, it might not come down to this, but let's just say it comes down to players get everything they want. So let's just say players' max contracts go up to $3 million. They go up to $3 million. They 15x. They get everything they imagine. They get the revenue split. They get everything. I don't think this is going to happen. But the asterisk is they get everything, but they are no longer allowed to play in outside leagues. So you can get everything you want, but Unrivaled, no. Project B, no. That benefits 200 players. So, no, that benefits 150. Let's just say there's 200 spots in the league. I think, like, or if they make it 15 rosters, 225. That benefits 200 of the 225 players. The problem is that not only are all the people that it would negatively affect on the board, the three of the main voices, Stewie, Fee, and NECA, all three of them are in super high positions. And with the way it seems like things are going when it comes to equity, when it comes to when it comes to all that stuff, they are they might just say no. They might, let's just say that's the thing. That is the offer. Take it or leave it. You can get everything you wanted, 3 million max salary, but no outside leagues. If you guys don't accept this, it's a lockout. Do we think those players are going to accept the deal? Do we think the players will accept a deal that benefits 200 players but massively harms them? Massively harms them. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. We're in a situation now where that is why it's a conflict of interest. And you might be saying that scenario hasn't happened yet. Exactly. But it can happen. We don't know how these conversations are going. We absolutely don't. We don't know. But we do know the WNBA doesn't want players playing Unrivaled. And if I'm being honest, like, if you look at the Liberty lost one of their most important players from Unrivaled. I don't think the WNBA wants players playing overseas either, as we saw with the prioritization rules. So it's one of those things where the league can be very much in the wrong for all this. But if the league are compensating players fairly, they're well within their right to not want players to play in alternative leagues. And by compensating fairly, I mean compensating at least equal to those other leagues. Like, based on everything you've seen in terms of the revenue, when you add in charter flights and everything and how much they're getting. So, like, it would be a max contract of maybe 2 to 3 mil a year. Like, for me, that would be a max contract of 2 mil a year based on the losses for however many years and based on the fact that they only get a certain amount of the revenue. I think a max contract of 2 to 3 mil a year would absolutely be quote unquote fair. That would be fair for the players. And if they get offered that, they're well within their right. If the owners want to pay players 10 times more, you're not bringing in 10 times more revenue. You're not. You still are probably not going to profit. Like, you're still not going to profit. If the players if you're going to 15x players' money, you're not going to profit for another decade. But it is just interesting to see everything the way things are, because I do think that there is a conflict of interest there. And I'm glad Sophie's talking about it. And I'm glad that there's players willing to just admit that, because absolutely, like, if we are thinking that as fans, there's no way that their players aren't thinking that these people negotiating for this are doing it for their own they're doing it for their own interest and not the interest of all of us. Because it would be nearly impossible to not think that as a player or as a person. And that's not even saying that, like, Fee and Stewie are bad people. But, like, inherently in life, we all, before we think about the interests of others, we will all think about the interests of ourselves. And look, at the end of the day, it's an interesting one. It is an interesting one to see. But I'm glad, Sophie wasn't scared to say this, because I think a lot of players would be. And because there's no way that she's the only player that feels like this. There's absolutely no way. And I mean that. There's no way that Sophie Cunningham is the only player that, feels like the rest of the players are, or say that there might be conflicts of interest with the people negotiating the CBA. Because there is. There is. And there's a big difference there's a big difference in saying that the people are arguing or the people are maliciously representing them maliciously. Or the player or the people arguing aren't taking into account what benefits the greater player base or player base of the league, rather than just themselves or the stars. There's definitely there's a difference between saying that they're doing that and saying that there's a conflict of interest and that may happen in the future. Or it's hard to know whether or not some arguments are being made for the greater good of the players or greater good for themselves. And that's the thing. That's why, for me, I was like, they realistically should be stepping away. Or at least going into the background. So at least if it is, let's just say, it's a Kelsey Plum. I know she's playing Unrivaled and stuff, but let's just say it's a Kelsey Plum. And she's gonna end up taking over. She can mention the Project B, you can mention Unrivaled, but it's very different when you're one of the fucking co-owners, or in Project B, you're the first person they hire. But anyway, yeah, I'll see you guys.